Part 26. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishita D. Chapter 251. The crank-operated 6-barreled machine gun has the most terrifying rate of fire of this era. Each barrel can fire 200 rounds of bullets per minute. This kind of bullet also needs to be customized ejection ammunition, and the process is more troublesome than the musket ammunition of the Red Army. If the 6 guns are counted together, one such machine gun can fire 1,200 rounds of bullets per minute. The terrifying tongues of fire can even tear through some walls that are not thick enough. If converted into hours, 72,000 rounds of ammunition would be consumed in 1 hour. Of course, this is the consumption of one machine gun. Wherever everyone can see. Almost every servant by Hexia brought had a machine gun. Added together, there are as many as 100. In other words, 7.2 million rounds of ammunition are fired per hour. The entire Zhaohuang city has less than 7.2 million round ball projectiles in stock over the years. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that this rate of fire has completely exceeded the speed of stacking shields. Zhu Ziming swallowed his saliva. Although he is confident that he will continue to win Wendo. But when facing the muzzles of hundreds of miniguns, I still had a very bad premonition. It was as if he saw Zhu Ziming looking at him. Bai Hexia looked at each other and waved gently to Zhu Ziming as a greeting. And the next moment. Choo-choo-choo-choo. Hundreds of terrifying tongues of fire began to shoot towards the red-coated army. At this moment, countless people watching were like frightened birds, screaming and fleeing towards the Western Zhou dynasty. The opponent has already surrounded Gaoqiang's territory, so this time Gaoqiang doesn't even need to find any reason for war. Because this is something that is never allowed. Under the flames of the minigun, the firing line was torn apart instantly, and the red-coated troops fell piece by piece like wheat. Zhu Ziming's bad premonition has come true. Don't say that the current total number of Wenmo buffs is not enough. Even if it was enough, he didn't have time to make adjustments, and the speed of transferring the buff couldn't match the firing rate of the minigun. As for replacing the general's guards to fight against the line, it's even more nonsense. Being able to withstand the projectiles of ordinary muskets does not mean that the general's guards can remain unharmed under the firepower of the minigun. In the distance in the Gao family's territory, Gao Qiang had already eaten the last bite of the bun. After burping with satisfaction, he casually looked towards the battlefield inside and outside the fence. At this moment, hundreds of servants led by Bai Hexia were fighting against nearly 10,000 red-coated soldiers from the outside world who could not hold their heads up. Bai Hexia's feet were already piled with shell casings removed from the minigun. It was a wonderful imperial era, but Bai Hexia gave everyone the illusion that they were in a period of world war. As for the Wenmo buff that Zhu Ziming had high hopes for, it was naturally as thin as a piece of paper at such a terrifying rate of fire and could break at the touch of a touch. This also reminded Gaoqiang of what Mike said to him a few days ago. If anyone thinks that the barrel of a pen can be harder than the barrel of a gun, then he must have never seen automatic weapons. Lord King Huixian, let's withdraw. Under the sound of gunfire, the middle-aged official bravely crossed the fire net, came to Zhu Ziming's side, and was about to pull towards Zhu Ziming. You can keep the green hills and don't worry about running out of firewood, Lord Huixian. After hearing this, the other officials also followed suit. Yes, Lord Huixian, let's withdraw. The Gao family dares to attack the current prince, which is tantamount to treason. We don't have to risk our lives with a bunch of idiots. Hearing this, Zhu Ziming looked at several officials with displeasure. They were the ones who called themselves to fight, and they were the ones who said they wanted to withdraw. With these losers, they have a mouth, and they can talk all day long. But in the face of this proposal, all the scholars who stated that they were not moved were lying. Wenmo buff is Zhu Ziming's last, strongest, and only trump card. Being able to piece together a set of coordinated abilities has been hard-earned for Zhu Ziming. How can he, an inconspicuous elite of the Wuji League, come from so many inexhaustible back UPS? At the moment, the Wenmo buff is completely useless. Although it can be superimposed every half minute, it cannot withstand the firing rate of the minigun. In this case, if you don't run now, when will you wait? Fight to the death. An order was issued by Zhu Ziming to each camp of the Red Army. After the order is issued, Zhu Ziming waved to the general's guards and was ready to leave. Anyway, with the blessing of the Chindeo system, even if all the people in this group died, it wouldn't take much time for him to get another group together. Just find a reason to ask the superiors to transfer me out of Zhaohuang City, Zhu Ziming muttered to himself. Anyway, the action against Gaoqiang is just the task of Wuji Alliance. If he had known it was so dangerous, he shouldn't have left Mingxian Pavilion today. But at this moment, a member of the general's guard patted Zhu Ziming on the shoulder. "What's wrong?" Zhu Ziming asked in confusion. The general's guard stretched out his hand and pointed to the position behind Zhu Ziming. Before Zhu Ziming could turn his head, explosions resounded among the red-coated troops brought by Zhu Ziming. In the raging fire, screams could be heard endlessly. "Divine fire, flying crow!" Looking at the long-burning flame, Zhu Ziming immediately understood who it was, and his expression turned very ugly. "Turn around and look." Including him and several officials. The red-coated troops and the general's guards have all been surrounded by the city defense troops. The city defense forces of the east, west, south, north and west camps were all gathered together. The leader was Jin Dachan, who had been busy since yesterday and had no time to close his eyes. "Jin Dachan, I think you are crazy." The middle-aged official stepped forward and pointed at Jin Dachan and was about to scold him. "If the Empress blames you for besieging and killing the prince of the dynasty, can you bear the responsibility?" "Am I crazy?" Jin Dachan laughed angrily. "Ha ha ha, I think you are crazy. I just left for a few hours, and you made such a big fuss in my Zhaohuang city. Bringing troops to besiege and kill the unarmed people of my Zhaohuang city in the street, good, it can't be better." Zhu Ziming widened his eyes. He looked at Jin Dachan in disbelief, as if he didn't expect Jin Dachan to say such words. Behind him, by Hexios, hundreds of rotary machine guns did not stop because of Jin Dachan's arrival. Until now, the flames of death have been sweeping the front of the Red Army. Who is more dangerous? Zhu Ziming's eyes were completely ignored by Jin Dachan. He continued to look at the middle-aged official who came forward. Jin Dachan put away his smile and his face became cold. "A mere 7th rank official, calling me old man behind my back and calling me by my name in public. I am a 3rd rank official in the court, and you can humiliate me. Bah, I will not only call you old man, I will also call you dog." The middle-aged official pointed his finger at Jin Dachan. "Jin Dachan, I think you are going to rebel." Hearing this, Jin Dachan's tone became more and more flat. "Don't say this casually. What can I do if I say it?" After the voice fell, the middle-aged official's eyes stagnated, and a broken sword had already passed through his neck with a cold light. "Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, Mi Shi De Di. Chapter 252. Protect your lord. After the death of the middle-aged official, the general's guards immediately surrounded Zhu Ziming on 3 levels outside. Then he looked at the man's figure that suddenly appeared with vigilant eyes. Although the man had no strange smell, his clothes were ragged and he looked like a beggar. He was holding a rusty broken sword in his hand, and his whole person had a decadent attitude. Judging from his 2 black panda-like eye sockets, he doesn't look like a strong man at all. The several generals and guards standing at the front looked at each other and nodded to each other. "Kill him." The next moment, several people rode their horses and rushed in front of the man, stabbing forward with the knight's spear in their hands. But only for a moment. Several general guards who rushed out of the line suddenly fell down. If you look carefully, you will find several poison-quenched daggers stuck in the gaps between their necks. Killed instantly. Zhu Ziming's eyes widened. Before the firearms technology tree, the general guards were the strongest cavalry unit on the ground. That heavy armor can even kill 7 in and out of the Red Army, telling everyone with facts that times have not changed. However, now, the general's bodyguards who were regarded as personal bodyguards by Zhu Ziming died so easily. Then there is only one possibility. This decadent man now is a general unit with an entry. After Zhu Ziming entered this war game, he was a general unit that he could only dream of. That guy Jin Dachan has such subordinates. During the period when Zhu Ziming was hesitating, the situation of the Red Army, which was being attacked from both sides, took a turn for the worse. Originally faced with many guns, they could barely escape into civilian houses to take shelter. Now that the city guard army is approaching, they have nowhere to hide. Your Majesty King Huixian, the city guard battalions in the east, west, south, north and west have been surrounded. A leader of the Red Army shouted loudly. From his tone, it was not difficult to hear the fear and despair he felt at this moment. If we originally only attacked one Gao family, even if we couldn't defeat him, there would always be a chance to escape. But now that the city guards have joined the fight, they immediately become chickens and ducks in a cage waiting to be slaughtered, and they cannot escape even if they have wings. Finally, another official besides Zhu Ziming couldn't help but stood up and angrily yelled at Jin Dachan, "Common man, if you can, kill me too." One day when the Empress learns about this, she will attack the territory with a large army and kill all Zhaohuang city without leaving any trace behind. My humble life is worth it in exchange for the whole Zhaohuang being buried with me. Hearing this, the corners of Zhu Ziming's mouth twitched, and tears seemed to be about to fall from the corners of his eyes. If he could, he would want to go up and slap the opponent twice. At this time, he was still thinking about stimulating the other party. He was really out of his mind to hang out with such a group of officials. Sure enough. Jin Dachan smiled instead of angry. Okay, I will help you today. Kill. After receiving the order, the decadent man disappeared. When he reappeared, the official who had just spoken had his body and head separated. When? The general's guards turned around in shock. When did the other party cross us? Zhu Ziming, on the other hand, looked at the man who was so close in horror. I said what he just said had nothing to do with me, do you believe it? The man raised his head and said nothing. But seeing the look in his eyes made Zhu Ziming feel a chill. It was a look that no longer had any nostalgia for this world. Where did Jin Dachan find this guy? Don't believe it. Just 2 words, like a whisper from hell. Zhu Ziming only had time to transfer the Wenmo buff that was still on the field to himself when he heard a shattering sound. Turn around and look. The broken sword was already placed on his neck. If he had been slower, he might have lost his head like other officials. However, at this moment, a folding fan flew over and broke the shield on Zhu Ziming's body. Who? Zhu Ziming turned around and looked. He saw Lian Qian stepping on the shoulder of a general guard and looking at him with a smile. The folding fan has bounced back into Lian Qian's hand. After an experiment, Lian Qian has determined the shortcomings of Zhu Ziming when MO buff. Any attack will inevitably consume a layer of shield. The same is true for a giant cannon that can break through city walls, and the same is true for a gentle tap with a folding fan. Before the general's guards could react, Lian Qian had already approached Zhu Ziming and grabbed him by the collar. Although what you just said was quite pleasant. It's just that there are still some uncomfortable aspects. You know what? Lian Qian leaned close to Zhu Ziming's ear and said mysteriously. For an adult, if you are in a bad mood, you will develop crow's feet. You. Zhu Ziming pointed at Lian Qian and opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. He couldn't break away from Lian Qian's power, and he didn't dare to stimulate Lian Qian anymore. The poet path should be the one with the weakest combat effectiveness among all the paths that attribute great power to themselves. Therefore, once he is approached, Zhu Ziming can only hope that others will save him. You go deal with those guys. Lian Qian pointed at a group of general guards who were throwing themselves at the enemy, and waved her hand casually towards the decadent man on the side. Then he looked at Zhu Ziming with a gentle smile. Leave this kid to me. Ah! Zhu Ziming's screams resounded through the sky. Lian Qian didn't actually do anything, just played with the folding fan on Zhu Ziming's forehead. But watching the literary and artistic buff decreasing bit by bit, Zhu Ziming only felt that the breath of death was getting closer and closer to him. At the same time, without Zhu Ziming's dispatch of the buff, the Red Army could be easily torn apart like paper. Zhu Ziming's subjects on the field were getting fewer and fewer. Therefore, the total number of literary and artistic buffs that could be obtained in each round of literary fighting was also getting less and less. At first, Zhu Ziming watched his own literary and artistic buff return to 0. Ah! Throwing the folding fan again, a big bump appeared on Zhu Ziming's head. Lian Qian smiled with satisfaction. It's over. Before dark, drag all the bodies out of the city and burn them. Jin Daqin commanded the city guard camp to deal with the remaining bodies on the battlefield. At this moment, beside Lian Qian and the decadent man, the general's guards had fallen to the ground. And Zhu Ziming also lay on the ground with his eyes wide open. After taking out a handkerchief and gently wiping his hands, Lian Qian elegantly threw the handkerchief on Zhu Ziming's face. These days, anyone dares to come to the Gao family to cause trouble. At this time, Jin Daqin, who was far away, also arranged the tasks of the city guard camp, and followed behind Lian Qian and came to Gao Qiang. Wipe the sweat on his head. Jin Daqin walked to Gao Qiang with a smile on his face. Are you not scared? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Me Shi Da Di. Chapter 253. That's not true. Gao Qiang shook his head. In addition to being forcibly awakened by Shasha, even if he was not present in this battle, the Wuji Alliance people would not be able to break into the Gao family's fence. The ventilated fence wall on the west side gave the opponent's musketeers a chance. It also gives the minigun a perfect shooting angle. In addition to blocking people from moving forward, this fence is like nothing when it comes to bullets. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang turned his head and glanced at Shasha, who was making a face. He won't let himself sleep for such a trivial matter. This guy is really seeking revenge. But with so many people present at this moment, Gao Qiang just glared at Shasha, and then returned his attention to Jin Daqin. Looking at Jin Daqin, Gao Qiang asked a question curiously. Although I know that your heart is drawn to me, the person I heard who died just now seems to be a prince. Are you really not afraid of the Empress' revenge? Never thought that Jin Daqin would sneer. You mean the current Empress Wu? To tell you the truth, the Wu family represented by the Empress is only 100 years old. It is not even as good as my Jin family, so how can it compare with the Gao family you represent? That's a bad thing to say. Standing in the Dao Palace, the Empress will always be the Emperor of Dao. Oh, hearing this, Gao Qiang became even more curious. What about after leaving the Dao Palace? After leaving Dao Palace, there is only one emperor in the world. Jin Daqin put on a mysterious posture and said slowly, that is the hidden emperor of Dao, the head of the Gao family. Be careful what you say. At this time, an old voice came from behind Jin Daqin. Gao Qiang looked towards the source of the sound. He was an old man with grey hair, but he had a straight figure, and the book in his hand was so thick that it could kill someone. Master Yuan. Jin Daqin lowered his head and did not dare to say more. After Shasha saw the person coming, she also hid behind Gao Qiang, not wanting to see the person coming. Gao Qiang understood it in his heart. Since Shasha assumed this posture, it seemed that she was also his subject. If it were an outsider, it would be impossible for Shasha to show such a fearful attitude. Opening the old man's property panel, Gao Qiang also saw the other party's condition. Gao Yuan. Occupation, bachelor. It turned out to be his own bachelor. Gao Qiang thought the same thing. Since he had the Miracle Architecture University in his hands, how could he not have a single bachelor? When you open Gao Yuan's entry, the golden light is also shining, but it is still less than that of Shasha. Deletiangzia, when you use a reasonable reason for war, if this unit serves as the main general, it will summon all aristocratic families that have existed for more than 1,000 years to join the war as a servant army. Future technology, when this unit is used as a scientific research unit, it has a probability of producing experimental weapons that surpass this generation and cannot be copied. Integrating essence and removing impurities, this unit is good at refining essential information. When this unit has no work, the scientific research speed increases by 200%. Looking outside at the rolling blood stains on the ground that cannot be washed away, Gao Yuan sighed. It's a pity that I came a step too late after all. My lord, if you do this, you will be criticized by everyone in the world. Hearing this, Shasha's little head popped out and made a face at Gao Yuan. Shasha won't let the lord be bullied, luo. Seeing Shasha's appearance, Gao Yuan sighed helplessly. What I teach you every day should be convinced by morality. You little girl really can't listen to it at all. Pointing to the blood stains outside, Gao Yuan said earnestly. When a friend comes from afar, you should hurt his heart, strain his spirit, destroy his ambition, destroy his reputation, and invite everyone in the world to attack him. How many times do I have to explain this simple truth to you, a little girl, before you understand? After hearing this, Gao Qiang looked strange. Is this the result of integrating the knowledge of hundreds of schools and the opinions of one family? Why do I always feel like something is not quite right? Gao Yuan slowly shook his head and explained the stakes. According to Gao Yuan's description, King Huixian's attack actually gave the Gao family a good excuse. The evil empress of the world's noble families has been around for a long time. If King Huixian had not died, Gao Qiang would have waved his arms and responded to 100 responses, using the world's aristocratic families as a force, and the empress would inevitably compromise further with the aristocratic families. By then, there is a possibility that the Qindao system will collapse. Hearing this, Gao Qiang narrowed his eyes. The Dao dynasty was a dynasty established later, and the so-called ministerial system still appeared. In this way, in the imperial era, the system of ministerial affairs can be artificially supported. Since it can be artificially supported, it can also be artificially destroyed. Gao Yuan meant something. After expressing regret for a few times, Gao Yuan changed the subject. Everything is just a word of reason. Now that King Huixian is dead, reason is no longer in our hands. I don't know what the situation is with the Empress, but the three princes in the palace will definitely attack our Gao family. Although our Gao family is not afraid of those three princes, for the sake of your lord's safety, it's better for you to be careful. At this time, Jin Daqin hurriedly said, I have naturally taken into account what Master Yuan said. With that said, Jin Daqin waved behind him. Yufu, come up and call someone quickly. The decadent man stepped forward step by step and slowly clasped his fists at Gao Qiang. I hold a humble position and have met the head of the Gao family. This is the best knight in the world that I have found in the martial arts world. It is more than enough to protect the head of the Gao family. Because Jin Daqin has secretly sworn allegiance to Gao Qiang. Gao Qiang can naturally see the corresponding attribute interface of Jin Daqin's generals. Yufu. Profession, martial arts. What really surprised Gao Qiang was the entries that Yu Fu had. When he opened the entry interface of the opponent, he saw several golden lights flashing. The best in the world, when this unit is in a duel, the combat effectiveness is increased by 3 times. When this unit is besieged, the combat effectiveness is increased by 5 times. All kinds of equipment, this unit can quickly familiarize itself with all unused weapons. The power of the magic weapon, according to the quality of the weapons equipped by this unit, it will cause additional damage to the enemy's weapons in battle, greatly increasing the chance of breaking the blade. This is the first time that Gao Qiang has seen a unit with so many golden entries from someone other than his own people. And Yu Fu's combat effectiveness is naturally obvious to all. One person can fight against a whole well-trained general guard, and can also take off the heads of the enemy officials under layers of protection. Such a person can also take the heads of enemy generals among thousands of troops on the battlefield. The most important thing is, Gao Qiang narrowed his eyes and looked at Yu Fu. The other party is not his subject, so he will not be unable to command, which just makes up for his own shortcomings of limited movement. After all, if Gao Qiang asked Bai Hexio to go buy vegetables, Bai Hexio would definitely not go. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De. Chapter 254. Since it is City Lord Jin's kindness, I will just stay. Gao Qiang decided Yu Fu's fate with one word. But he was still a little curious. Since City Lord Jin calls you the best martial artist in the world, why did you choose to join me? But he never thought that after Gao Qiang said these words, Yu Fu's aura became more decadent. He gave a wry smile. Yu Fu slowly recounted his experience. The number one in the world who is not recognized by everyone in the world is just a ridiculous compliment from Master Jin. After Yu Fu's explanation, Gao Qiang learned. Yu Fu's so-called number one in the world was obtained by defeating 11 heroes from various states in a row in the arena of the Jianghu competition. However, if there are many people who lose, it is natural for some to hold grudges. Since that time, everything Yu Fu has done has been distorted. I don't know what the heroes from all over the world have done. The mother and daughter he once rescued called him a villain who maliciously hurt others and wanted to defend the robbers. The old man to whom he had given money accused him of hurting himself in order to blackmail him for more support. Jianghus all over the world regarded him as a demon and a scum, deprived him of his title of number one in the world, and even shouted the slogan that everyone should be punished. After his heart died, Yu Fu came to Jin Dachen's staff and became an insignificant official, seeking some peace for the time being. Number one in the world, haha. Yu Li smiled sarcastically, as if he was laughing at his youthful and frivolous past. Without the protection of background, he is nothing. For a third-grade official like Jin Dachen, the so-called number one in the world is nothing more than a joke. Raising his hand and cupping it towards Gao Qiang, Yu Fu said, head of the Gao family, don't worry too much about my betrayal. When I leave here, I will be the devil that everyone in the world calls to beat. I can't go back long ago. Showing his loyalty, Yu Fu stood aside quietly and said nothing. After hearing about Yu Fu's life experience, the scene gradually became quiet. Snort. Suddenly, Gao Yuan snorted coldly, breaking the silent atmosphere on the field. Looking at Yu Fu, Chief Gao said bluntly, if you want to protect me, the head of the Gao family, your equipment is not enough. Yu Fu looked at the broken sword in his hand, smiled bitterly and shook his head. Master Yuan really didn't know that the sword was already the sharpest divine weapon in the world. At that time, it was by virtue of this sword that he could barely survive the siege by Jianghu. If this sword can be reforged, even in the forbidden areas of the current palace, people with humble positions would dare to go there. Judging from Yu Fu's expression, what he said didn't sound like a lie. But Gao Yuan still shook his head. Wait for me here. He slowly left the place, and when Gao Yuan came back, he was followed by 2 apprentices, and in their hands, the apprentice held an Otaki sword that was more than 2 meters long. Gao Qiang took a look at the properties of the Otaki and found that it was actually a rare item. Experimental weapon, Otaki broken shape, rare object. Characteristics, extreme edge, blood drain, tear, heavy armor penetration. Rare object is actually not the most eye-catching item about this Otaki. The most important thing is the words experimental grade weapons. Gao Qiang remembered that in Gao Yuan's entries, experimental grade weapons were usually epoch-making and non-replicable products. Sure enough. After handing the Otaki sword to Yu Fu's hand, Gao Yuan took out a cloth bag and handed it solemnly to Yu Fu's hand. This is. Yu Fu seemed a little puzzled. When Gao Yuan first arrived, he showed him how to use the Otaki in person. At the handle of the knife, there is a hidden ammunition hole that can accommodate 3 armor-piercing bullets. The bullets in the bag have undergone an epoch-making design. The design does not require a trigger, and it can be easily activated by simply holding the Otaki with different strengths through Yu Fu. Even depending on the strength of the grip, this Otaki can fire up to 3 consecutive shots, emptying all bullets in an instant. Yu Fu fell into a daze, seeming to be shocked by Gao Yuan's ingenious but unethical novel design. Gao Yuan patted Yu Fu's shoulder. If you want to protect the head of the family from the hands of the 3 princes in the palace, you must use such a special enough weapon. At this moment, in a side hall of Dao Imperial City, De Situ was sitting next to a man. The man was playing with a lot of precision gadgets in his hands, and they looked like they might be damaged with just a slight touch. He is the current Grand Sima and one of the agents of the Wuji Alliance stationed in this war game. Most of the technologies used by the Wuji Alliance in this war game are almost all from his handiwork. This also has to do with his personal talent. Personal talent, benefiting the world. Benefiting the world, you can consume half of the research resources required for a certain technology, allowing a lord of your clan to instantly master a technology you own. Suddenly, De Situ's eyes changed and he stopped the work of De Sima in front of him. Another candle has been extinguished in the southwest. We must take some action. I'm still busy here, you can make your own decision. De Sima was a little unimpressed. If it doesn't work, go to De Sikong for help. Don't you and I still know what his character is? De Situ felt helpless, so what are you busy with? Cycling technology, De Sima said calmly. With the last part in his hand placed, a cycle technology was researched and completed. Bearing strengthening. Introduction, we have strengthened our sliding bearings to make them tougher and more wear resistant. Effects, vehicle load bearing add 5%, movement speed add 1%, loss minus 5%. That's all the effect, De Sima frowned. A vehicle that could originally carry 100 kilograms of rice can now carry 105 kilograms of rice, so what? This bonus is so insignificant that he doesn't feel the need for any research at all. You don't understand. De Sima shook his head. He continued to look at the technology tree. In the technology tree, the back of the bearing enhancement is still the bearing enhancement. If he wants, he can research it indefinitely. 5% is insignificant. But what about 50%? Once stacked, this bonus will be extremely terrifying. De Sima looked out the window. Has an enemy from the miracle path entered this war game? Only the miracle path can make such a terrifying thing at this level. Unfortunately, no matter how strong the cycle technology is, it takes time to develop. The other party, however, will not be able to wait for this opportunity. Because he will only become stronger. Seeing that De Sima ignored him, De Situ sighed. I will deal with him myself. After saying that, he rushed out of the door. Under the brief calm, there was an undercurrent. The first 2 figures in simple clothes walked outside the gate of Zhaohuang City. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De. Chapter 255. Both figures were dressed in men's clothes. At this moment, they were sitting in a carriage heading to Zhaohuang City, chatting casually. The smaller figure looked at the other person and slowly said, "Your Majesty, this time you are visiting incognito, without a guard, isn't it a bit too arrogant?" Yes, the person in front of her was the current female emperor of the Dao dynasty, Wu Mei, and the 15th emperor of the Dao dynasty. After hearing this, Wu Mei shook her head. "Ling aren't you my guard?" The smaller girl's name is Ling Yanning, and she is considered a family member of the Ling family, a great family in the dynasty. But the advantage is that the Ling family is Wu Mei's confidant, and Ling Yanning is also a guard specially trained by the Ling family for the female emperor. Since Wu Mei came to power, Ling Yanning has been protecting Wu Mei personally, and I don't know how many blind assassins she has killed. Over time, the other party has become Wu Mei's most trusted person. On the surface, they are monarchs and ministers, but in private, they have gradually called each other sisters. During this incognito visit, Wu Mei used a substitute technique to leave the palace. She did not even tell the three ministers in the palace, and only informed Ling Yanning. Thinking of this, Wu Mei looked at Ling Yanning with a smile. "If there is really an assassin, I am afraid that the traitor is between you and me." Ling Yanning sighed. It was not that she was nervous about Wu Mei's joke, but she was a little impressed by Wu Mei's arrogance. However, Wu Mei had made up her mind, and she could not persuade her. After all, she was just a minister. Then Ling Yanning asked Wu Mei with some curiosity, "What is the purpose of your Majesty's incognito visit this time? Could it be that your Majesty really thought it through and planned to find some handsome men among the people to fill the harem?" At this point, Ling Yanning couldn't help but sigh. Since the establishment of the Dao dynasty, there has never been an emperor who lived past 45 years old. Wu Mei also ascended to the supreme position above all others at the age of 20 after the death of the previous emperor. But unlike the previous emperor, Wu Mei did not seem to be in a hurry to get married and have children to expand the Wu family royal family. Instead, she was keen on visiting various places incognito without telling the three ministers. Zhaohuang City happened to be Wu Mei's target this time. Facing Ling Yanning's joke, Wu Mei was not angry, but shook her head and poked Ling Yanning's forehead with her finger. You sighed. Wu Mei pointed to the outside of the carriage with a melancholy look in her eyes. "What did you see along the way from this state?" Although it was not clear why Wu Mei asked this, Ling Yanning still answered seriously, "I saw that the people lived and worked in peace and contentment, and this was all due to the credit of your Majesty." "Is this the picture you saw?" Wu Mei repeated it softly. Then she said what she saw. "What I saw is that there are more than 700 princes in this small state. Is this Dao dynasty my dynasty or the dynasty of those princes? Your Majesty, be careful." Ling Yanning glanced at 11 Zhou vigilantly, then whispered to Wu Mei's ear. "The princes are all conferred by the three dukes in the palace. Although they have a name, they have no power, and they don't receive a salary. Your Majesty, there is no need to worry about a piece of empty name." "Yes, the three dukes in the palace." Wu Mei naturally saw Ling Yanning's fearful expression. "The three dukes in the palace are divided into the Shangguan family represented by the Grand Marshal, the Gongmen family represented by the Grand Minister of the Interior, and the Liang family represented by the Grand Minister of Works. Even the Ling family, which belongs to the royalist faction, is wary of the three dukes in the palace. Although the three dukes in the palace have experienced several changes, they have been loyal to the Dao dynasty for 100 years. Even Wu Mei herself didn't know why. She would absurdly connect the emperor's short life with the three officials in the palace. "Hey, are you going to enter the city or not?" At this time, there was a curse from behind. A dark-skinned man came to the carriage and pointed at Wu Mei and cursed, "If you don't enter the city, don't occupy the toilet without taking a shit. If you don't move, do you know how many carriages are waiting for you behind?" Perhaps because Wu Mei was not dressed like a rich man now, the other party had no psychological pressure to curse. You. Listening to the other party insulting the current empress. Ling Yanning was so angry that she subconsciously took out a long sword from her waist and was about to unsheath it. But Wu Mei secretly held it with her hand. In a place where the man couldn't see, Wu Mei shook her head at Ling Yanning. Then she turned to the man and smiled, "Excuse me, big brother, we'll leave now." After that, she drove to catch up with the team in front. Seeing Wu Mei so tactful, the dark-skinned man did not continue to pester him. He just muttered a few more words and turned away. "Your Majesty, why don't you let me kill the scoundrel who insulted you?" While queuing to enter the city, Ling Yanning seemed a little puzzled. "Even if you are kind-hearted and can't bear to kill him, as long as you reveal your identity and summon the city guards to put him in jail, it will be easy, right?" Wu Mei sighed and flicked Ling Yanning's forehead. You. She didn't blame Ling Yanning. After all, the Ling family is considered a big family in the imperial city, and their way of thinking is a little different from others. It is also under the influence of the eyes and ears, and there is nothing they can do. But there are some things that the aristocratic families can do, but they can't do. The position of the great Wu Emperor is both a right and a responsibility, and even a kind of confinement. However, because of Wu Mei's approach, the two entered Zhaohuang city without any setbacks. As soon as she entered the city, Ling Yanning turned her head and looked at Wu Mei. "I heard that there is a restaurant called Mingxian Pavilion in Zhaohuang city that is famous. Your Majesty, why don't we go there to rest today?" Mingxian Pavilion? Wu Mei thought about it slowly, and it was not a place where her identity would be exposed. After all, it was just a place where the family mainly provided meals. If ordinary wealthy businessmen were willing, they could live there for a while. Then just do as Ling Er said. The reins of the carriage were handed over to Ling Yanning. Wu Mei leaned against the window frame of the carriage and began to look at the current situation of Zhaohuang city. It must be said that under the governance of the three dukes in the palace, the core area of the Great Wu dynasty has not experienced natural disasters or man-made disasters for a long time. At present, Zhaohuang city is prosperous and wealthy, the people are peaceful and happy, and no one who passes by is hungry. Even Wu Mei can't find any fault with the achievements of the three officials in the palace. But suddenly, Wu Mei frowned slightly and sniffed at 11 Zhou with her delicate nose. Although the road in front of the carriage was flat and the ground was clean and tidy. But she smelled a faint smell of blood and gunpowder here, which lasted for a long time. "Wait." Wu Mei widened her eyes and grabbed Ling Yanning's hand. "Quick, turn the carriage around." She finally knew what was wrong. This Zhaohuang city is so prosperous, how could there be such an unmanned road? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 256. After hearing Wu Mei's order, Ling Yanning did not hesitate, turned the carriage around, and headed towards the road he came from. When they first returned to the noisy street, Wu Mei made Ling Yanning stop. "Your Majesty, what happened to you just now?" Ling Yanning looked at Wu Mei with some concern. "There's something not quite right there." Wu Mei frowned. She originally thought it would be an assassin targeting her. But with such a smooth exit, Wu Mei felt that things were not as she thought. Think for a moment. Wu Mei suddenly picked up an embroidery bag and got out of the car. 11 Zhou looked around and then Wu Mei walked up to an old man buying vegetables. The old man looks very old, and even the old white hair on his head looks sparse, but few people ask about the vegetable stall in front of him. Wu Mei took out a silver bean from her embroidery bag and handed it to the old man. "Old man, can I ask you something?" Seeing the silver beans handed over by Wu Mei, The old man quickly waved his hand. You can't use this much, you can't use this much. If you have anything to do, young man, just ask me. After Wu Mei heard this, she glanced at 11 Zhou. Then he put the silver beans on the old man's vegetable stall, pointed to the empty street just now, and continued to ask, I accidentally walked a distance there just now, but what I saw was an empty street. My little brother is here for the first time in Zhaohuang City. I was afraid that I might have violated some taboos, so I wanted to ask you. Seeing where Wu Mei was pointing, the old man's expression changed. He quickly called Wu Mei to the back of the vegetable stall and whispered in a voice that only the two of them could hear, that's the place bordering the Gao family. How dare you go there? The Gao family, what is the Gao family? Ling Yanning's voice came from the side, seemingly curious, but full of pride. After Wu Mei glared at her for the first time, Ling Yanning closed her mouth angrily. Ouch, the old man patted his thigh with hatred. You dare to talk about the Gao family so loudly, are you going to die? Do you know how to write the word Gao for how high the sky is? That means the height of the Gao family. Seeing that the old man was so afraid of the Gao family, Wu Mei couldn't help but show curiosity. Old man, can you tell us in detail? Because someone was willing to gossip with him, the old man did not refuse. He just glanced at the street where Wu Mei was pointing, and said slowly, I'll tell you quietly, not long ago, tens of thousands of people died there. What? Wu Mei subconsciously exclaimed, then covered her mouth in embarrassment. This Gao family has committed such evil deeds in Zhaohuang City. Isn't it possible that no one can cure him? Your reputation of Dao dynasty minus 200. Your reputation of Dao dynasty minus 200. At the same time, Gao Qiang, who was lying on the old man's chair and basking in the sun, looked a little baffled at his sudden decline in popularity. What did he do to him who was so good? On the other side, the conversation between the old man and Wu Mei continued. After hearing what Wu Mei said, the old man chuckled. Young man, you don't know. Among the tens of thousands of people who died in the past few days, some of them were contributed by the current lord of Zhaohuang City. At that time, all the city defense camps in the east, west, south, north and west were mobilized, and there was such a huge momentum. Having said this, the old man clicked his tongue twice, seeming to be feeling something. Ling Yanning was so angry that she almost wanted to take out her sword. The Gao family is so lawless, do they still have royal laws? Wang Fa. The old man glanced at Ling Yanning. Who do you think died? The person who died was the current King Huixian, who was granted the title of Holy Emperor. Now I heard that even the body was burned. Not only that, even the guard of Yuancheng Pass and the county guard of this county disappeared after offending the head of the Gao family. Wu Mei clenched her fists as each word she heard from the old man's mouth was more shocking than the last. Why does she, the powerful Empress Wu, not know a word about things that even a random commoner knows? From this point of view, if she really continued to sit in that high hall, she might become blind with her eyes open. Wu Mei actually doesn't know who King Huixian is. Judging from the more than 700 princes in this continent, it should also be the work of the 3 princes in the palace. But even so, compared to the so-called King Huixian, her impression of the Gao family was actually worse. Dao will not sit idly by and ignore such a domineering family that massacres tens of thousands of people. After saying that, Wu Mei looked at the old man, bowed her hands and thanked him, and then returned to the carriage with Ling Yanning. Entering the carriage, Wu Mei whispered, it seems we don't have to go to Mingxian Pavilion tonight. Ling how long will it take to mobilize troops from the nearest pass? Ling Yanning made an estimate and then reported back, if there is a pass with sufficient troops, Xiaoshan Pass is the closest. The guard of Xiaoshan Pass is the Zhenshan marquee conferred by the 3 princes in the palace, so you don't have to worry about the other party colluding with the Gao family. In this case, I will immediately write a letter and order Genshanho to enter the city and capture the Gao family. After writing the edict, Wu Mei was not in a hurry to send it out immediately. Before that, the purpose of her private visit incognito had not been achieved. It is different from the previous emperors of the Dao dynasty. Compared to them, Wu Mei seemed a little rebellious. The most rebellious part was Wu Mei's strange distrust of the three dukes in the palace. Now that such a big thing happened in Zhaohuang city, it was still calm. Obviously, it was not just the credit of the Gao family. As the victim, the three dukes in the palace seemed to have contributed to suppressing the storm. This also made Wu Mei confirm something. The three dukes in the palace concealed something from her, but she didn't know whether the things they concealed were much or little, big or small. Thinking of this, her mind gradually calmed down, and Wu Mei temporarily put away the edict. Once this edict was sent out, she would inevitably arouse the vigilance of the three dukes in the palace, and it would be difficult to find an opportunity to leave the palace alone. Your Majesty, what are you doing? Ling Yanning had followed Wu Mei for so long, so she naturally saw Wu Mei's hesitation at the moment. The next moment, Wu Mei gritted her teeth and said something that Ling Yanning didn't expect. Tonight, when the moon is dark and the wind is high, let's go and check on the Gao family. At this moment, Ling Yanning really wanted to persuade Wu Mei that you are His Majesty, not a bandit, and there is no need to hide everything. But hearing Wu Mei's unquestionable tone, she could only sigh and agree. That night, two figures wrapped tightly in black cloth quietly touched the fence of the Gao family. The defense is so lax, Ling Yanning couldn't help but complain. However, the next moment, Ling Yanning's ears moved, and he drew his sword and looked behind him. Behind the two of them, a group of people dressed similarly to them were slowly walking out of the dark. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De. Chapter 257. The two waves of people were embarrassed in place, seeming to be thinking about one thing. Tonight, it turned out that we were traveling together? However, soon, a sleepy and slightly decadent voice came from within the fence. You are already the fifth group of people who have come together during this period. Yu Fu stepped on the hollow space in the fence and stepped out. Every time at night, even the servants of the Gao family nursing home have to rest, so the entire Gao family is left in his hands alone. Yu Fu didn't even know that this was trust in him. Still purely squeezing their own labor force. The Gao family's land is still very large, okay. After landing on the ground, a group of people dressed in black also saw Yu Fu's appearance. A decadent face, and clothes that looked new but had not been taken care of, and even the buttons were crooked. There is also a large sword that is larger than Yu Fu's entire body. Suddenly, a leading man in black sneered. The blood-handed demon slaughters Yu Fu. I never expected that when we meet again, you will become the family dog that guards the family's courtyard. Bloody hand demon slaughter? Wu Mei frowned slightly as this didn't sound like a title for a good person. Sure enough, birds of a feather flock together and people flock together. Only such a treacherous and evil person would hang out with the Gao family, creating a nest of snakes and rats. However, what Wu Mei didn't expect was that the man in black soon released a bombshell. Facing Yu Fu, the man in black suddenly made a condition. Since you, Yu Fu, are willing to be the family dog of the noble family, why don't you work with us to work for the three princes in the palace? Whether it's wealth or status, no one else can give you what the three princes in the palace can give you. Wu Mei pursed her lips slightly. She actually wanted to ask, couldn't even the current empress give it to her? But in order not to reveal her identity, Wu Mei remained silent for the time being. Your Highness, Lord 3. Yu Fu looked at the leader of the man in black. It sounds like he is a much bigger official than a third-grade official. Where is? A smile appeared on the corner of the man in black's mouth, and he said seductively, as long as you join us, power, status, wealth, and women will not be a matter of a word, Right. But, Yu Fu said slowly, but his hand had already pulled out the Otaki sword from behind. The title you just shouted made me very unhappy. Bang. There was a gunshot, and the head of the man in black who had just spoken had a ball of blood mist explode on his head, his eyes widened and he fell down. Is this negotiation broken down? Ling Yanning quietly protected Wu Mei. And the moment you touched his hand, the man in black beside him had already made a move. 18 kinds of weapons greeted Yu Fu, and suddenly the air was filled with all kinds of hidden weapons. He's from the Blood Demon Pavilion. Seeing the movements of these men in black, Ling Yanning's eyes narrowed slightly. In order to better protect Wu Mei, the Empress of Wu, as a guard, she naturally has knowledge of various killer organizations. Among them, Susha Pavilion is a very stubborn killer organization in the world. It is about a character that they dare not touch as long as you give them money. Even several members of the imperial family have been assassinated by the Blood Demon Pavilion, but they were never successful. But what I didn't expect was that an organization like the Blood Demon Pavilion, like Leng Toking, could actually be recruited by the 3 princes in the palace and do shameful things for them in private. Suddenly, Ling Yanning's eyes widened and she looked at Yu Fu in disbelief. I saw that the 2-meter-long Otaki shattered dozens of weapons that were attacking him with just one semicircular slash. While more than a dozen killers were still dazed, Yu Fu struck again, directly cutting off the people in the circle. Colorful intestines mixed with blood flowed all over the floor. Because they were cut off at the waist, those killers did not die immediately, but fell to the ground and kept twitching and screaming. What a scene of purgatory on earth! On the other hand, the killer's blood flowed into the grooves of the Otaki blade, making the Otaki appear a coquettish red in the moonlight. Ling Yanning protected Wu Mei even tighter. This guy with the title of Bloodhand Demon Slayer doesn't seem to be an easy character to deal with. Several killers who had not participated in the siege of Yu Fu looked at each other and already thought of retreating. More than half of the people who died this time are still able to communicate with the superiors. Want to leave? Yu Fu seemed to have seen the intentions of several killers. In other words, after being hunted for so many years in the world, Yu Fu knew all about the urinal nature of these killers. Holding the Otaki sword in his back, Yu Fu made a gesture to put the sword away. Bang bang. 2 gunshots were fired, and the 2 killers fell down. The remaining killer assassins no longer hesitated, turned around and ran towards the location of the residence. However, Yu Fu calmly reached for the bag on his waist and took out 3 bullets. This Gao Yuan specially made experimental weapon has a reloading speed that is even faster than the muskets of this era. Reloading the 3 bullets took less than 1 second in total. After all, you only need to insert the bullet into the handle of the knife to complete the loading. Bang bang bang. 3 more shots rang out. The 3 killers who escaped also fell down, not knowing whether they were alive or dead. At this time, Wu Mei suddenly felt a little creepy. After dealing with all the killers, Yu Fu's eyes were already looking towards Ling Yanning and Wu Mei. And his hand had gradually touched the cloth bag on his waist. Your Majesty, hurry up. Ling Yanning knew that if the other party successfully reloaded the bullet, Wu Mei's life would not be guaranteed by her. So she rushed to Yu Fu first. Before Yu Fu finished reloading the bullet, he was just a swordsman. He had to interrupt his action before he changed his job to a gunman. Thinking of this, Ling Yanning's eyes were firm, and a sword flashing with cold light in his hand was immediately unsheathed. This sword is the heirloom of the Ling family. The sword is decorated with blood amber and golden flowers, and nothing can't be cut. However, the next moment, Yu Fu's big sword came to cut. An inch longer, an inch stronger, the more than 2-meter-long big sword still brought a lot of pressure to Ling Yanning, so she had to raise the sword to resist. Clang! The sword shattered with a sound, and the inlaid treasure decorations scattered all over the ground. How is it possible? Ling Yanning showed a dull expression. This is the heirloom of her Ling family, how could it be shattered by a collision of blades? However, Ling Yanning did not realize that. The dozen killers whose weapons were cut off earlier were also stunned by this thought. Yu Fu swung his hand back, and the big sword was about to chop again. Just when Ling Yanning closed her eyes and gradually gave up resistance, a roar came from behind Ling Yanning. How dare you! The strong airflow blew Ling Yanning's long hair away, but the two of them did not need to disguise at this moment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Me Shi Di. Chapter 258. Wu Mei was holding a jade seal in her hand at this moment, and she looked at Yu Fu with angry eyes. An invisible big hand was suppressing Yu Fu, preventing him from chopping down. Boom! With a loud noise, Yu Fu was thrown out and hit the fence wall. Fortunately, the fence wall was resilient, and Yu Fu did not suffer much damage from this attack. But after standing up, Yu Fu still looked behind Wu Mei with fear. In Yu Fu's eyes, since Wu Mei took out a small cube from her arms, a strong momentum has enveloped her. That momentum is protecting Wu Mei. If Wu Mei wants, she can suppress anyone in an instant, just like she did to herself just now. But Yu Fu glanced at the big sword in his hand. Because of the blood-sucking characteristics of the big sword, he noticed something that others could not detect. The power Wu Mei used at this moment was not free. The invisible existence behind her was devouring her life and blood. If she continues to use that thing, Wu Mei will die faster than anyone else. Suddenly, Wu Mei raised the Great Wu Emperor seal in her hand and shouted, "The jade seal is here, why don't you bow to me?" In fact, she didn't expect it to get to this point today. The assassins dressed like her disrupted her plan to investigate the situation at Gao's house. But when she saw Ling Yanning was about to be beheaded, she couldn't help but take out the jade seal and exposed her identity. It shouldn't be easy to sneak out of the palace next time. Wu Mei sighed. The big noise caused by the jade seal has attracted the attention of the city guards. At this moment, a large number of city guards are gathering towards the place where the battle took place. Seeing this, Wu Mei's eyes lit up and she was about to have someone take Yu Fu down. But the next moment, the whispers among the city guards froze Wu Mei in place. "Hush, keep your voice down, don't disturb Mr. Gao's sleep. Neither you nor I can bear the responsibility of waking up Mr. Gao." Wu Mei, holding the jade seal, was at a loss. This was the first time she encountered such a situation. Although she felt that the princes and dukes appointed by the three dukes were not very respectful to her in the past. But they didn't ignore her completely like Zhaohuang City. Is it possible that in the eyes of those city guards, she is not as good as the head of a family? A nameless anger was boiling in her heart. At this moment, she didn't care to show her identity to the city guards. Wu Mei took the jade seal directly and was about to suppress all the city guards present with supreme power. Bang! With a gunshot, the jade seal in Wu Mei's hand slipped out of her hand and fell into a dirty ditch. "How dare you!" Wu Mei looked at Yu Fu with anger on her face. It seemed that she didn't expect that the other party would dare to treat such a noble object as the Great Wu Emperor seal like this. However, Yu Fu looked at Wu Mei and said something quietly. "Without that little cube, do you have any other power?" Wu Mei's face froze, and she turned her head to look around. The city guards had already surrounded her. It was obvious that the city guards of Zhaohuang City and the Gao family were in the same group. "How dare you do anything to His Majesty?" Even though Ling Yanning had no weapons, she stood alone in front of Wu Mei, pointing at the surrounding city guards and scolding them. "A bunch of slaves dare to be so unreasonable to the current empress, aren't you afraid that the three dukes in the palace will kill your 9 clans? What made Wu Mei sad was, it was not until Ling Yanning mentioned the names of the 3 dukes in the palace that the city guards restrained themselves a little. But soon, a person who looked like the captain of the city defense team came out and looked at Ling Yanning. Pointing at Wu Mei, You said she was the current empress, where is the evidence? Evidence. Ling Yanning was furious. You have thrown the imperial seal into the ditch, and now you come to us for evidence. Are you blind just now? Sorry, the city defense captain seemed very calm. According to the order of the city Lord Jin, all unknown elements in Zhaohuang City who attempt to attack the Gao family will be treated as treason. Since you can't produce evidence, then come with us. Ling Yanning gritted her teeth and looked at the stinking ditch beside her. I'll go find the imperial seal, right? However, at this moment, a cold spear was pressed against her throat. The city guards have already lined up, and the well-trained military officers and soldiers have become her biggest obstacle at the moment. The captain of the city guards repeated again, since you can't produce evidence, then come with us and wait for the Gao family's master to decide. Wu Mei clenched her fists, and then quickly released them, which calmed Ling Yanning's emotions. It can be seen from the attitude of the city guard camp. The other party probably won't give me the chance to get the identity certificate. We'll just go with you. For the sake of her own and Ling Yanning's safety, Wu Mei had to compromise temporarily. Humph, wouldn't it be better if we did this earlier? The captain of the city guard snorted coldly, and then waved his hand. Press down the prison. When retreating, the city guards took care of the bodies in front of the Gao family. Since Zhu Ziming's death, the Gao family has never been peaceful at night. It seems that someone wants to avoid the Gao family and take Gao Qiang's head directly by assassination. But unfortunately, most of the masters didn't see the servants of the Gao family, and they were defeated in front of Yu Fu. After everyone left, Yu Fu walked to the stinking ditch and took out the jade seal. He didn't think it was difficult to talk about digging the stinking ditch. When he was hunted by the martial arts world, he had been to even dirtier places to survive. In the blink of an eye, the midday sun had already shone into the house. Lord! A scream woke Gao Qiang from his sleep. Then a small hand reached out and lifted Gao Qiang's quilt aside. What are you going to do again? Gao Qiang hurriedly grabbed the quilt back and covered himself. While rubbing his sleepy eyes, he looked at the person who came. Then Gao Qiang was stunned. Isn't it Sasha? He thought it was Sasha who called again because of the gesture of lifting the quilt when entering the house. As a result, he found that the person standing in front of him was Hayukin, who was angry. Hey, did the Lord call me? Next to the door, Sasha came out with a small dried fish in her mouth. Then he looked at Gao Qiang. Sister Yu is here too. At this moment, on Sasha's shoulder, the black ball was stretching out her oval little hands, constantly trying to pick the small dried fish in Sasha's mouth. Wow! Seeing such a scene, Gao Qiang held his forehead and shook his head, and shooed Sasha out. Then he looked at Hayukin, who was angry. Well, so what happened? Hayukin stared at Gao Qiang, looking at a heartless man. Where is the coat I have treasured for a long time? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida Di. Chapter 259. Clothes, what clothes? Gao Qiang gradually came back to his senses from his dream, and suddenly realized what Hayukin was talking about. The coat in the mansion. Well, he said that the climate in Zhaohuang City is pleasant, so how could a wolfskin coat be found in the mansion? It turned out that the gold coins exploded from Hayukin. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang couldn't help but feel embarrassed. He coughed twice and looked out the window. Do you think there is a possibility that the coat has self-awareness and thinks it's too hot here, so it went to a cool place? However, when he turned around, he saw Hayukin's expression as if he was teasing me. Okay, I'll take you to find it. Looking at Hayukin's expression of concern for the wolfskin coat, Gao Qiang suddenly came up with a plan. But you have to promise to do something for me, Gao Qiang continued. At present, the Gao family's university has not triggered the victory conditions, probably because no university scholars from other lords have moved in. In this case, why not send Hayukin to the Ji family under the pretext of the wolf skin code, and pick up some university scholars for yourself? After hesitating for a while, Hayukin still agreed to Gao Qiang's request. Seeing this, Gao Qiang nodded with satisfaction. As long as he found the right method, he could still command his people. After entrusting Hayukin with matters related to the university scholars, Gao Qiang opened the interference interface and found Ji Lenjiao's name. At this moment, Hayukin's avatar can be dragged. First, drag Hayukin to the interference column, think about it, and then Gao Qiang drags a sky boat up. Although doing so is likely to show his armed units in front of the Wuji League, he doesn't care much. Then, go early and come back early. Waving to Hayukin, Gao Qiang confirmed the interference plan. Then, under the rules of the war game, Hayukin's figure gradually disappeared from the spot. Gao Qiang squinted his eyes and glanced at the midday sun outside the window. Well, it's still early, just enough to catch up on some sleep. After confirming that it was still early, Gao Qiang lay back on the bed comfortably and continued to fall asleep. At the same time, in the city lord's mansion of the border town in the bitter cold land, Ji Lenjiao was watching his three brothers and sisters discuss countermeasures. Under the leadership of the three leaders of the Ji family, the Wuji League's layout in this small town did not resist for long. Now this border town has completely changed hands. Second sister Ji Qinghua smiled slightly, tapping her fingers on the table. This time, the Wuji League has given us a big gift. From the firearms used by the people following behind, it can be seen that the Ji family has undergone a complete upgrade in terms of combat effectiveness. As a large family that can arrange war games, the Ji family naturally has its own means of dealing with emergencies. And this means of dealing with is Ji Qinghua. The banker path that Ji Qinghua has will get the first active ability when he enters the 4th level. Lend-Lease Act. Effect: when you defeat a lord, you can give up all your claims on him and instead lease all his recruitment options. It was through this ability that the eldest sister Ji Lingxian did not rush to kill the person who single-handedly took down the Wuji League in this border town. Instead, she used his life to lease the right to recruit soldiers for a full 20 years through Ji Qinghua's ability. Now all Ji Qinghua can recruit are the top arms of the Wuji League, and in terms of the quality of the arms, it is already on par with the Wuji League. What we need to do now is the pig-raising tactic. The third young master Ji Shun pondered for a moment and expressed his opinion. As long as the other servants give up development and fully support Ji Qinghua who can recruit top arms, the Ji family will soon be able to raise a legion that is no less than the Wuji League. Except for the defect in quantity, this legion will not be much weaker than the Wuji League. Opening the map found in the city lord's mansion, Ji Shun slowly pointed to a marked point. Before we develop, we must solve a threat. This is where the county magistrate is, and it is also the biggest obstacle to our development. And what we need to do is to use the county as bait to lure him out, and then slowly kill him with the power of my eldest sister. Then, Ji Shun's hand covered the bitter cold land. Once the county magistrate dies, the county is leaderless. We can naturally take this opportunity to take the city first and then the world. Ji Lingxian nodded. Third brother is right. Then he turned his head and looked at Ji Lenjiao. What do you think, little sister? Ah! Ji Lenjiao was stunned and pointed at herself blankly. Now she is washed like a blank board, and she can't understand it at all. I sit and watch. Ji Lenjiao asked hesitantly. Seeing the sudden silence, Ji Lenjiao hesitated and stood up, bending over, and said obediently, or I stand and watch. At this moment, Ji Lingxuan's face turned cold. Ji Lenjiao was startled and squatted down with her head in her hands. Big sister, I was wrong. She was under a lot of pressure in front of her 3 brothers and sisters. However, after waiting for a while, she didn't hear any scolding. Ji Lenjiao slightly opened her eyes and looked forward, only to find a petite figure appeared in front of her. Then there was a reminder of the war game. You have temporarily obtained the affairs officer, Hayukin. You temporarily obtain the unit, Tianzhou X1. A Tianzhou pulled by a hot air balloon appeared above the Ji family. It quickly rose to an altitude of 10,000 meters without attracting the attention of anyone in the Ji family. And looked down at Ji Lenjiao, who was squatting in front of her with her head in her hands. Hayukin couldn't help but ask, has your brain been washed? Hey, you're going too far. Hearing such insulting words, Ji Lenjiao stood up angrily. After standing up, Ji Lenjiao found that he was actually taller than Hayukin. Hey, is the other party so petite? Ji Lenjiao subconsciously reached out to touch Hayukin, fragrant and soft. If only I could have a younger sister. Feeling the feeling of being a sister for the first time, Ji Lenjiao held back the words she was about to curse. Until Hayukin stepped on Ji Lenjiao's foot. Ah! Ji Lenjiao immediately jumped up holding his foot. Seeing this, Ji Lingxuan's face changed, and she was about to reach for her double-edged sword. Ji Lenjiao reacted quickly, blocking Hayukin and Ji Lingxian, and shouted loudly, "Sister, don't, she is my affairs officer." Although he didn't know why he had an extra affairs officer, Ji Lenjiao still believed the hint of the war game. Thinking of the war game, Ji Lenjiao realized that Gao Qiang had sent him a friend message. The owner of the wolfskin coat has also sent it to you. It's just a piece of clothing. You can discuss how to divide it. Gao Qiang. A scream resounded through the city lord's mansion. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi Di. Chapter 260. After persuading both sides to sit down, Ji Lenjiao and Hayukin stared at each other. Until Hayukin stretched out her hand. Give it back to me. That. Give it back to me. Okay, okay. Ji Lenjiao ordered the people to bring the wolf skin coat. In fact, since the capture of this small city, Ji Lenjiao has not worn the sauna room given by Gao Qiang. There are many normal sweaters in the city. Although they are not as warm as wolf skin coats, they are enough for an ordinary person like her. Take back her own wolf skin coat. Hayukin put the clothes on her body, curled up in the clothes, showing a comfortable expression. It feels so safe, Ji Lenjiao can't help but envy. The wide, large, and furry wolf skin coat can perfectly cover the whole body, and the sense of security is naturally indescribable. The only pity is that it is too hot. You are sensible, Hayukin said lazily. Shrinking in the wolf skin coat near the table, Hayukin casually glanced at the plan that Ji Shun had originally proposed. Then he said bluntly, your plan won't work. Hey, what do you mean? Ji Shun immediately slammed the table and stood up. Hayukin narrowed her eyes and looked at Ji Shun. In fact, I only need you to offer the university scholar, but since you are sensible, I will remind you. Reaching out her little hand from the wolf skin coat, Hayukin pointed to the people standing guard. Do you think these people are capable of great use? Although he didn't know what Hayukin meant. But seeing that Hayukin looked young, Ji Qinghua still patiently explained, their military equipment is close to the peak of this era. She didn't answer Hayukin's question directly, but also indirectly expressed her trust in these top-level troops. If you plan to rely on these people, you will die miserably, Hayukin said without hesitation. Ji Lingxian frowned slightly. She was not as eager to argue with Hayukin as her second sister and third brother. In fact, compared to these, she was more interested in the grand scholar that Hayukin mentioned at the beginning. Ji Lingxian pointed at the table and indicated that everyone should look at her. Then she asked Hayukin, let's not talk about this for now. Can you explain what Grand Scholar means? In fact, when she entered the game at the beginning, Ji Lingxian found the option of recruiting Grand Scholars. Grand Scholars are a basic unit that can be recruited without barracks and technology prerequisites. But the resources required are quite exaggerated. The resources required to recruit a Grand Scholar can recruit thousands of low-trained menial soldiers. One man against thousands of troops is really not just talk. But on this basis, the Grand Scholar did not show the corresponding value at all. He was powerless and could not add any bonus buff. It seemed that he was just eating dry food. That, I seem to know. Ji Lenjiao raised his hand weakly. Then he forwarded the bonus buff of the university from Gaoqiang to his 3 brothers and sisters. 200% research bonus. Ji Qinghua was the first to scream. It's not her fault. After all, the Bankers' Lend-Lease Act can only be effective for military units, and it can only be effective for Ji Qinghua alone. So what Ji Qinghua can do is to be no weaker than other forces in terms of military strength. Other aspects are completely impossible. Technology trees such as planting, transportation, and equipment all need to be studied independently. In this case, the 200% research bonus is simply a godlike blessing for Ji Qinghua. Is it so good? Ji Lenjiao glanced at her interface awkwardly. Although the interference cleaned her up, it also brought her a full 3 times the research speed, which has exceeded the bonus of the university scholar entering the university. But why does she feel that there is no difference at all? After pondering for a while, Ji Lingxian raised his head and said to Haiyukin, in this case, I will order 20 servants to recruit university scholars today, and you will go back. Because the cost of university scholars is too high, although the Ji family has just captured a city, it can't gather so many resources for a while. Haiyukin was not in a hurry, and nodded casually. Anyway, she only heard Gao Qiang asking her to send some university scholars back. As for sending more or less, she didn't hear Gao Qiang say the quantity requirement, so it was natural. But Haiyukin looked at the plan prepared by Ji Shun on the table. Only she understood that in this era, the simple type of soldiers is no longer the main factor in determining the direction of the war. It's a pity that the Ji family couldn't understand what she meant. In Zhaohuang City, the sun at noon slowly set at this moment. In the afternoon, the sun was not so dazzling, and Gao Qiang yawned and sat up from the bed. When he walked out of the door, many people in the Gao family's territory had already gotten up early and started the most arduous work of the day, sunbathing. After taking a short nap in the early morning, Yu Fu had already been waiting in front of Gao Qiang. Good morning. Gao Qiang greeted Yu Fu, and seeing that Yu Fu was still in that decadent look, he walked over directly. After taking 2 steps, Gao Qiang suddenly realized something and took a few steps back and walked back. Looking at the jade seal on Yu Fu's waist, Gao Qiang pointed at it. Where did you get this thing? Last night when you were sleeping, a guy who claimed to be the Great Wu Empress tried to break into the Gao family. He has been captured by me and the city guards. Yu Fu lowered his head to report. Captured the Great Wu Empress? Gao Qiang listened to Yu Fu's report with a strange look on his face. He just slept for a while, what the hell happened? Seeing that Gao Qiang seemed to be interested in the jade seal, Yu Fu took this unknown small square from his waist and handed it to Gao Qiang. Looking at the jade seal handed over by Yu Fu, Gao Qiang's face became even stranger. Because in the interface of the war game, this is not the jade seal of the Great Wu dynasty at all. Panlong Great Seal, Imperial Seal of the Meteoric Dynasty. Speaking of the Meteoric Dynasty, in the early intelligence of this war game sent by the Ji family, it should be a dynasty located in the Endless Swamp in the west. And that was not a human dynasty at all, but a dynasty that belonged exclusively to the dragon race. It is said that the Yunqian dynasty was occupied by thousands of dragons, and the countries in all directions dared not to move rashly. Before the establishment of the Dao dynasty, Even the dynasties of the frost giants, the undead and other tribes were very afraid of it, not to mention the human dynasty that was not very strong at that time. But Gao Qiang didn't understand why someone who claimed to be the Dao Empress ran to his Gao family with the imperial seal of the Yunqian dynasty. What a mess! Where was the Empress taken? Gao Qiang couldn't help asking. The waters of the Tianlao in Zhaohuang City. Yu Fu lowered his head and answered. Gao Qiang touched his chin. Well, you go and fish out the Empress, and by the way, go to the university to call Gao Yuan to see what's going on.